What if every experience, every hardship, every obstacle was given to you, not to break you, but to mold you and strengthen you? What if the center of your suffering was actually the key to ultimate health? And what if your own pain was meant to be the catalyst for your greatest purpose? Welcome to Buddha Belly Life, empowering purpose, mind to microbiome. Welcome to the Buddha Belly Life podcast, you guys. I am Coach Britt, and this month I am here solo. It's a solo session, and this one's really close to my heart. Today we're going to be covering mental health and female hormones, okay? And it's going to be kind of hard for me not to trail off a bit with this, simply for the fact that men are absolutely, I will talk a bit about men too. I hate to only include women in this, but the point is if we don't break up some of the content when teaching some of these lessons and doing some of this, then we can't get as specific. And right now we specifically need to talk about women's health and hormones, and kind of what we need to be aware of. Okay, so this isn't to exclude men, and I will touch on some of it, and it is pertinent, but today we just really need to hone in on women today so that we can understand some things with how women function. So please keep in mind, yes, hey, I am not a professional. I am not a mental health professional. I am not a counselor, a psychiatrist, nor am I a doctor. I'm just a coach with information, and we're going to be covering a necessary topic today. We're also going to be discussing some heavier material today, some topics such as suicide rates, anxiety, depression, and death, and things like that. Okay, so we are going to touch on some of that, but I hope if you can still stick around, that I can share some things with you. I'm going to talk a bit about my personal journey, especially this last year, stuff I haven't really talked about yet, and kind of some profound experiences. And I hope that we can reach a few people. I hope something resonates with you, okay? So, all right, let's talk about this. Okay, why are we talking about female hormones and mental health? Okay, you guys, this is so important. I'm going to spit some stats at you, okay? According to the Agenda Alliance, 26% of young women experience a common mental disorder like anxiety or depression. This is almost 3 times more than men, okay, than young men. 1 in 7 young women, ages 16 to 24, have PTSD, compared with only 3.6% of young men. So 72% of those in suicide counseling, okay, are girls. Okay, this is women in general. And there's a few reasons for this, and we're going to talk about that. Okay, the irony of some of these things, you guys, and keep this in mind, this is a powerful and unfortunate statistic, is that while women struggle with by far more issues with mental health, women between the ages of 16 and 24 are almost 3 times as likely, 26%, to experience a common mental health issue as males of the same age. However, when it comes to suicide rates, almost 70% of suicides are men. Okay, so this is a big deal, and it's, we think like, why is that? And they kind of are looking at these are some of, yes, we're talking about gender today. It's not necessarily specific. There's people that, may resonate a little differently with some of this, but generally in our culture, right, men are just going to be less apt to talk about or seek help or talk about these feelings. We're taught that this kind of stuff is an area of weakness, instead of just health. Mental health is health, and it affects everybody, whether or not someone's actually said that they struggle with anxiety, depression, or something that they pick out. Okay. But it's really important. But what we want to talk about too is the correlation between hormones and mental health. So this is a really big deal, you guys, because, okay, things like, we have something now that's being called PMDD. So I know you've heard of like PMS, so premenstrual syndrome, right? PMDD is, okay, something that says present during the luteal phase and disappears after menstruation commences, right? But in contrast to PMS, so PMDD typically confers marked functional and social impairment. So this is like severe PMS, okay? It's severely affecting the quality of life and well-being. Previously referred to as late luteal phase dysphoric disorder, PMDD is now categorized as a depressive disorder and has a disease of the system in the International Classification of Disease Update. So what's most important though is that recent research has suggested that PMDD is the result of psychological shifts in reproductive hormones and is associated with altered cellular processes and several neurobiological differences such as abnormal dorsolateral prefrontal cortex function and executive control network connectivity. Okay, that probably makes no sense to the majority of people that are listening to this. So I'm going to layman's term it just a little bit for you. The prefrontal cortex is something we talk about all the time. We talk about it when it comes to anxiety. Really, executive function is big. So ADHD and any kind of impulsivities and stuff like that, we tend to see lower function in the prefrontal cortex. We see this too when someone is in extreme state of like rage or stress or emotion. They can have less function in the prefrontal cortex. This is where you'll see, murder cases that are, they say crimes of passion. There was a trigger and a complete flip out. This was what they're going to call that the lizard brain. It's very primal. And so what we're seeing similar lack of functioning in some women. And this has hormonal connectivity. Okay. So during certain times of the month, and you'll notice this can be noticed by extreme emotional shifts. And it could be rage. It can be, emotion, depression, to where things feel just so extra and so heavy. And I just want to say that this is really important societally to change the way that we are able to talk about female anything hormones. I think that it's something that it's like we shy away from, and it's unfortunate. More and more women are starting to talk about it now in professionals, but everyone needs to be able to talk about it. And partners of women, so men in our life, I think it's something that we've kind of distanced ourselves from. Guys are like, ew, female stuff, right? Or it's seen as a weak thing. Oh, PMS, it's probably her time of the month. No, we need to understand how extreme hormones, how much they affect our brain function and emotional health. Okay. So it's not something we just make fun of anymore, or crack at, or pass off. We need to pay attention to this stuff, and we need to pay attention to it with everybody around us, men and women, but especially with our girls, especially with our teens. Okay. Cause they are going through, as they go through different hormonal phases in life. So this is like when they're coming into puberty. This is going to be in teen years. Obviously pregnancy, postpartum is really huge, perimenopause and menopause. These are some of the natural cycle shifts or shifts of hormones in life. And unfortunately, we have so much external stressors coming at us, screwing up the function of hormones. So we've got toxins in our environment. We've got poor nutrition, poor health, all this stuff that's setting us up for hormonal catastrophe. And we're seeing it in the form of mental health. Okay. And the really unfortunate part of all this, you guys, it really rags on me. Okay. Is that often someone will go to their doctor, their OBGYN, and they're put on, if they're expressing like severe PMS symptoms, or if they even discuss with them their mental health, they're then often given either SSRIs, so antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, and or hormonal birth control to deal with this bad PMS. And we're not getting back and looking at hormonal profiles and making sure that this body is functioning adequately and looking at it from a holistic perspective, right? Holistic health is mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. We need to get in and we need to look at it from a holistic perspective, okay? Because the stress that we're going through emotionally, especially in our teens, guys, we want to downplay stuff, okay? But let's all just go back to our early life. Like, when's the first time you had your heart broken? When was the first real relationship? When you were in school and maybe you were made fun of, or you felt like you didn't belong? I mean, kids can get so much of their world exists in this small little box. Now we have social media and all that to compound. Okay, so it really messes with our heads and it messes with our stress, and that is going to then also mess with our hormones. And maybe our hormones are already not in alignment and it's just going to amplify these life experiences. So we need to be eyes wide open on this at all ages, but especially parents. Like, we really need to be aware. So what we want to talk about too, so stress and hormones, you guys, I'm trying to go through a few of my notes here without reading too much. But I want to talk about cortisol. Okay, so cortisol you're going to see as the stress hormone, often, right? But cortisol often is referred to as a stress hormone. It plays a significant role in mental health in females. Okay, while cortisol is essential for regulating stress responses, okay, it's not a bad thing. It's supposed to in a healthy body. It's going to regulate stress responses. It's going to come in when necessary, when there's really something to worry about, and it's going to then pull away when it's done. So it's normal in maintaining normal bodily functions. But chronically elevated levels can have adverse effects on mental well-being. So in females, cortisol levels can be influenced by various factors, including stress, poor sleep. Let's emphasize that. Okay, especially in our kids, I think we're pushing them way too hard. We're not teaching them how to rest. And when they do rest, they're resting on their phones and they're not actually resting. They're keeping their brain going all the time. And this is setting them up for mental health disaster. So stress comes in the form of diet, exercise or lack thereof, and hormonal fluctuations. So chronic stress in particular can lead to dysregulation of the HPA axis. Okay, so this is resulting in prolonged elevation of cortisol levels. And this chronic elevation of cortisol has been associated with an increased risk of developing mental health disorders such as anxiety, depression, and PTSD. And PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, I think we often think of that as, okay, we think of like our veterans, our soldiers, PTSD. PTSD comes in all forms. We have childhood PTSD. It can be from an accident. It can be just from a profound experience that affected that person. Okay, and that is subjective to the experience of the person. But PTSD, what's interesting here is that what we see is a difference in resilience. So PTSD is going to happen when we're really, really still afflicted by something, an experience or something that we've gone through, right? And what we're seeing is that these hormonal fluctuations, this dysregulation, can actually affect our risk of PTSD. So how resilient our body and our brain are to trauma. It doesn't mean there's not still trauma to be worked through, but why do some people bounce back after trauma and others fall apart? Okay, and we can't always compare apples to apples, but it's really interesting to look at. So additionally, cortisol levels can fluctuate during different stages of the menstrual cycle. So this is in response to hormonal changes associated with pregnancy and menopause. These fluctuations can impact mood and emotional well-being in females. So, for instance, when some women may experience increased stress sensitivity or mood disturbances during certain phases of their cycle, like pregnancy, postpartum, and due to changes in cortisol levels. So we also see that estrogen may actually interact with cortisol, so influencing the stress response, potentially affecting mental health outcomes in females as well. And estrogen has been shown to modulate the HPA axis and regulate cortisol levels, which may contribute to differences in resilience, why some people feel really good and why others feel really bad.
Do you have a desire for fulfillment? Does helping people tap into their own health mentally, emotionally, and physically fire you up? Do you believe in the impact of the gut microbiome on overall wellness? You may be an HWCA coach. For more info on our cutting-edge health coach trainings, visit hwcacoach.com.
And with estrogen, okay, estrogen is one of those heavy hitters too. We have a lot of cases now of estrogen dominance. So what's a dominant estrogen? Even if you don't have overly high estrogen, okay, estrogen and progesterone, these hormones, they kind of have this balance that they need to keep, much like the gut microbiome, right? They need to be in their adequate ratios in order to function really well together. And when they start going out of those ratios, then we start seeing dysfunction. okay, and dysregulation. And estrogen, because we're in contact with so much junk, our diets, the chemicals and everything, a lot of people struggle with estrogen dominance or a lack of being able to recycle it out of the body and rid it. So too much estrogen in the body, which is going to, then we're usually going to see lesser progesterone. And progesterone, you guys, is usually the hormone that comes in. You'll see it when people are pregnant. It elevates during certain parts of the cycle, but it's supposed to be more of a calming hormone. Okay. And it's not for everybody depending on the state of their body. So all of these things women are reacting to. And see, men, their hormones don't change like that. They kind of change with the rise and fall of the sun. I always joke about this, with the rise and fall of the sun, right? And women's are changing constantly. They're changing with the time of the month. They're changing with the time of the year, with where they are in their development. If, from teens to pregnancy, postpartum, to perimenopause, menopause. I mean, we have so many fluctuations. And then if any wrenches are thrown in that, which plenty are, extra stress, the emotional loads that we carry in psychological, baggage, the junk in our air, food, water, body products, poor diet, poor sleep, all that kind of stuff, breastfeeding, right? Like all these things that are coming in and changing all that. They're already fluctuating. So we know that they're sensitive, and yet they're tough too. The body is really tough. But these sensitivities, you guys, can set us up for mental health. And why we need to talk about this more is because if we can understand that, then we don't just fall into it. We don't just succumb to the state of our brain and body, right? If I can know that, hey, there's strong hormonal connections. Hey, right before my cycle, I am starting to quit life. I'm ready to run away from my family. or I'm experiencing more severe symptoms. Then I can look at that and go, but you know what? I know that this could be a misalignment of my hormones making this so much worse. I should probably get in and see somebody. And unfortunately, your average doc, and even in OBGYN, they're not talking about this enough. They're not pulling the right tests. And so you want to also add a functional medicine practitioner, somebody who can understand these things, who wants to get down to the bottom of functional health and pull real hormone, blood panels, things like that. See, things like nutrient deficiencies and stuff can affect all this too. So, what really got me covering a lot of this, you guys, was I want to kind of share a little bit of an experience with you. So I know anybody who's followed me for a while, you know that my passion is mental health, and I got into gut health from debilitating anxiety, panic disorder, depression, but especially anxiety and panic for majority of my life since age 4. And then what I thought was hormonal just issues, miscarried a couple babies, all that. And so it got me into gut health because I got into healthy food and saw the improvement, and then not enough improvement. And it wasn't until working on the gut, learning about that HPA axis, learning about the brain gut connection, learning about what these species in our gut microbiome, that they produce so many neurotransmitters, that they're responsible for a lot of hormonal function and nutrient absorption or lack thereof. I mean, it was like, whoa, okay, all this stuff is affecting our brain. And if in a low quality brain is going to yield a low quality of life. So a low functioning brain is going to yield a low quality of life. And so after, that's been my story, but I got into gut health and saw marketed changes in my mental health and everything. That's been my testimony. So for 10 years of that, it's been wonderful. Well, like everyone knows, I mean, life throws things at you. And I would say 2023 has been probably the hardest year since 2020. It may even have rivaled it, for me personally. And the stress and the things that were out of my control just took me out. Okay. And yet, like a lot of you guys can relate, we still have to show up. If you're a mom, you got to show up. I'm a mom to 6 blended kids, 3 to 13. You still got to show up and run a household and do the things. And it doesn't matter how sick you are at the time or if you're okay or not. And so, I think I pushed through too much. I'm not sure, but I do know that October of 2022, I got hit with a panic attack. And mind you, my panic attacks have been pretty much obsolete for a decade. never since being a mother. And I've been so grateful for that because I'm like, I don't even know how I would function if it got back to there, and I have kids, so I got nailed one day with the worst panic attack potentially in my life. So it came back like, I can only laugh a little because it's like, it sucked so bad that it actually made me question. I truly believed that it wasn't even a panic attack, which I'm sure if you guys have dealt with that, you can understand. I actually thought my body was trying to go into a seizure. It was seizing up because I was driving and I was doing my breathing. In fact, I'm such a good breather that's apparently why this happened. But my hands crippled so tight. I had to pull over. I could not drive. My legs, my feet, everything. I couldn't open my hands. I was like severe cramping. Everything started cramping up and I couldn't feel my body. I mean, it was just like, I couldn't feel anything. Couldn't feel my torso and my face, just it was the worst. And I actually made my husband call 911. Okay. So I'm in this parking lot. It was a mortifying experience, but a necessary one. I think God gives us that stuff to humble us and to realign us where he wants us. So, all right, bring it on. But it really sucked. And God bless these guys. I mean, these firefighters pull up and I'm like mortified and they're like, okay, this sounds like a panic attack. Do you know what that is? They have no idea what I do. Or how much I know what a panic attack is, but that's just a testament to how severe it is. And they said that because of my breathing, because I was breathing so good, I actually should have been breathing different. Like I'm somebody who probably should have been like breathing out of a paper bag because I robbed all the like the CO2 or whatever from my body. Anyways, that's what caused the cramping, and it'll help me have a little bit of science behind that incredibly terrifying experience. But right after that, it was just more and more and more. It was chronic anxiety, all kinds of things going on with my body. And mind you, while this is happening, I'm just getting nailed with lots of life stuff just over and over. And it was relentless, honestly, for most of the year, and doing my best. And I saw it in my body. So now, it's going to things like ocular migraines, which are terrifying. When my body messes up, like it really gives me like some of the creepiest stuff, like ocular migraines. If you have ever had that, I won't get the pain, but I'll get my vision will just go out and I'll I won't be able to think straight and all. It was a terrifying experience. So I got a couple of those. I started dealing with just chronic, like upper gut, like felt like I had an ulcer all the time or quite often. It was coming and going a lot. Heart palpitations, weak, just like weird, either just chronic anxiety or fatigue or both together, which is creepy. And that's like an adrenal thing. Just going through so much. And so I'm pulling blood work. So I'm getting in to all the things I can. Of course, I'm calling my functional medicine doctor. I'm seeing my therapist. I'm doing what I know to do best, in the gut health world. And it's just ebbing and flowing, but yet I'm still pushing through a ton of junk. Life was still just not letting up. And so come back, I got my blood work back and there was a couple of things in there, right? So we did a Dutch test. So if you guys haven't heard of a Dutch test, it's a hormone test. It's where you pee on the stick and you can only have so much water and you pee on the stick at multiple times a day for a couple days or whatever, 24 hours. And it kind of checks your hormone levels at different times a day. And it's going to give some insight as to how your hormones are functioning. So that was kind of nice. And that honestly, that was pretty good. Like that test came back pretty good. So I'm like, what the heck? Pulled my blood work and I was anemic. So that was probably very much not helping a lot of these things. Lower vitamin D. And my thyroid antibodies were like 3 times what they should be. Which if you even give leeway for any at all, 3 times. And so what that means is they're mounting an attack on the thyroid. And this is what a lot of doctors miss. Women go into the doctor and they pull T3, T4, they pull typical thyroid panel, but they don't pull and they don't see anything. Oh, your thyroid looks great. Oh yeah, except for the fact that your body has an autoimmune attack on it right now. So it's only going to look great until it doesn't anymore, but then we'll catch it. We'll wait until it beats it up enough and then catch it, and I can only imagine that this is because it's not so easy to throw a pill at antibodies, but we know in gut health and holistic health that we can do a lot with reducing inflammation. So I was like, man, I got to get this inflammation under control for that. So I've been doing tons of things. Some things were working, some not, going through periods that were better, periods that were not. didn't know what was correlating anymore with my life and a lot of the stress that was happening. But I just kind of kept at it. And then of course we got to the holidays and sorry, we're getting to this part. I'm not pausing. This is harder. I need to tell this story. Sorry, I didn't think I'd get so emotional, but I do want to share this. So, ever since I was very young, okay, I dealt with severe panic and anxiety, and it would very much latch on to a fear of death and dying and being sick, being not okay, and not having anywhere to go. Literally. And my anxiety throughout my life has latched onto that to the point that it made me kind of hypochondriac, not like your typical hypochondriac that goes to the doctor, like the kind that, thinks that every headache is a brain tumor and, things like that, and doesn't have patience in the interim of answers. And that was me. And that's something that I've been working through a lot of my life, right? Especially in my adult years. And I was tested 5 years ago with this thing on my neck, as a single mom. And so to top off this year, bear with me for a second. I'm glad I'm not video recording this one. My aunt passed away. She passed on December 28th. And she had been battling stage 4 cancer. It started as breast cancer like 7 years ago. And very simple, small. They dealt with it. Came back in 2020, and it had come back like basically in her spine and her back. It was stage 4. And we've known this for a long time. So, the process of cancer, for you guys who have been through, I'm sure all of us have been through it to some extent. It's hard to watch and I was from a distance, my mom and stuff, her siblings, like my mom was very involved in the process. So I was kind of a second hand, present, but, it was bad in 2020. We didn't know how it was going to go. And her husband, God bless him, turned over every rock, both holistically and pharmaceutically, to do everything he could for her. And I think he gave her 3 amazing years, before she went. She was able to see her oldest son get married, her next son graduate college. And it was really, and you guys, the moral of the story, I promise you, it's a good story. It's just hard to tell, obviously. So, thank you for still listening. But yeah, so we'd known in the last 6-7 months, that there's more struggle than normal, and they're still trying some things and not, but she was really starting to process this. And I am very empathetic, and I am also this exact topic of death and kind of sickness and suffering is the root of the biggest torments in my life. Right. And it's latched on with my anxiety. Like that, if you want to make me anxious, start talking about like stuff like this, like phantom sicknesses and the unknown and all that. And that's been me since a child. So since I was a kid. So obviously working through those things. But so we get to December and it starts not looking so good. And, we knew that. And the process that she went through before she passed was why I wanted to talk about this, like the process I went through, not to take away from her family and all that. It's not about me at all, but it is about, these stuff like this has such a ripple effect. Some things even seemingly small, like words and just basic experiences and stuff, you never know how far they go and what they dig into. So watching this process, how I could, I watched her go through, early on, the severe anxiety, probably brought on by medications, treatments, the state of the body, and then the nature of what she was dealing with. That went into a lot of things. That lasted a while, and that, I was gut wrenching for me, for her, because I was just totally feeling that. I was there with her, as much as I could be in my own head, thinking about it a lot and struggling. And then, she went on for a while, got some good, there's the hope phase. If you've gone through, there are people who miraculously heal, and, whether here on this earth or after it, we all do, right? That's what I believe anyway. That's what she believed. And so this process went on, but as of this last year, it started getting, a little harder and more hospitalizations and things like that. And I watched, I could tell just from talking to my mom and everybody close to her that she was processing this. She was starting to process, to watch her move from the anxiety to a level of acceptance. And the goal for her goal was to get through Christmas. So not ironically, she made it to the 28th of December. But the cool thing of it was, I really want to tell this part. But right before she went, she was walking around in her kitchen. And that's the crazy thing about cancer sometimes. And she told my mom that she just had this incredibly profound experience. She's a believer, and she just said she's so excited to meet Jesus, and she was just ready. She said everything had been said to her boys. They were the men that they were meant to be, and they, and she had all this peace about the whole thing. And that was just so crazy for me because, a lot of us trying to contemplate that, right? And so the day before she actually went was a really hard day. And ironically, guys, I was sick for 3 weeks. I rarely get sick, and then I got just nailed, and I didn't know what was what. If it was one virus, two viruses together, I obviously went way too hard at Christmas for the kids and everybody. And it was just really rough. And so I was sick. So I was sick as she was passing too. So this was amplifying the experience a lot for me too, because that day before she was really going, I was incredibly sick, and I just felt so much extra sick. I don't know how to explain it because of the emotion, and just my head was so in that. But what it did for me, the next day was really beautiful. The day she passed was, really beautiful. And I wasn't there, but I was very close to all the happenings. And what was crazy is that it forced me to jump into things that would have just dropped me to my knees. For Pete's sake, I'm almost 39 years old, right? This stuff isn't little. I started researching death, even things like the processes of the body, with hospice and stuff too. And really what dying's like in this circumstance, and what the body's doing. And are they experiencing this and this and this? And I started researching before this. I started paying attention and listening to all these, they call them NDEs, near death experiences. And there was this congruence in all of it. This peace and this beauty, and it really, really impacted me. That's why I want to share that with you guys. It was such a profound experience. And so right after she passed, obviously we get through the new year, and I'm, going to double down on what I'm doing, but I'm already in the industry. Like I've already been turning over all my own rocks, like doing the best of what I can, besides being absolutely immaculate. I mean, it was pretty frustrating. But a lot of things had changed, some things that started changing in my environment and stress and that experience with her. And I had an almost like miraculous change in my health after this. An insane change in my health. And it's hard for me to even talk about it out loud yet, because I don't, like, it's, we're about a month in and I want to keep going. On this, I finally had energy for my workouts again. Like I was still working out, but I just had nothing there. My weights and stuff. And it was sending me into like just this adrenal, just fatigue, and it was culminating, and just making me anxious and just so off. My eyes were messed up. I mean, just really sucked. And it was happening forever. And so this lifting of all this was really fascinating to me. And yes, there was a reduction in the stress. Yes, I was doubling down on my diet. We were working with hormones. You guys, that's the other point of some of this, is that I was doing a lot with my hormones, because my test came back great, except for the fact, like, my estrogen was healthy. I recycle it great, but my progesterone was just a little low, right? And sometimes and that's likely because of stress, when cortisol comes in there, sometimes then we can see a reduction in things like our progesterone and stuff. So that's likely what's happening to me. And so I got these results back, so I started doing these things, but it didn't explain the almost miraculous turnaround in my health. And I feel like a big part of that too was some of that kind of very spiritual experience with my aunt passing was it made this ginormous fear a little less, like a lot less actually. Not the fear of like death, like, okay, what happens just after we die, but the processes of the unknown, the processes of being sick or contemplating, mortality like that. And it was so amazing, because when it made it less scary, it made life so much more open. I've explained anxiety and as the difference between swimming in the middle of a pool, knowing you have to tread water, but you can see the edge of the pool right in front of you. The difference between that and having to tread water in the middle of the ocean. It's like there's nothing to grab onto. There's no one coming for you. Like, you are absolutely stuck and no one can help you. Like, that is the feeling that I can put to my own panic and anxiety stuff throughout my life. And what was insane was going through this experience. It's like it almost gave me this feeling like I could swim forever. Like, it didn't matter whether it's the ocean or a pool, like I can keep treading water. Like I have it in me, because when I'm done, like when that time's done, like it's not so daunting. And maybe we can make life more worth living. And I'm a very purposeful person. Like, I am absolutely passionate about empowering people into their purpose. That's like my solo number one of everything I do. And so it was really, really big for me. And I can't tell you how much I think that had an effect on my health and on this chronic stuff. I can't emphasize enough how much our deep rooted stuff, stress and experiences, and the stuff that plays on you guys and triggers things from early life too, really impacts us. But I know we're talking about hormones, and that was kind of a segue, but it wasn't necessarily, okay? Because back to some technicalities here, I did a gut test at the beginning of January, because I'm like, oh, my gut's screwed. I was just like so certain I would not be going through all this stuff if my gut health didn't just take a beating from this last year. So I'm thinking I'm going to do a gut test right now. And then I'm going to do it again in a few months. And I'm going to do all this stuff so diligently and keep up with what I've already been doing. and just see what happens. Start meditating, because gosh, I'd never make time for anything like that. Maybe some yoga. And then I'll do another one, and then I'll be a good testament for my coaches, and for our potential coaches and our audience of gut health people. Okay. So I'm going to do it. So I take the test and I get the results a few weeks ago, and I'm like, okay, cool. They're back. And I'm like, oh, I'm bracing myself, because I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good. And I look at them, you guys, and I'm blown away because they were phenomenal. My gut test came back phenomenal. So they score it on a level of 0 to 40. Anything above 30 is excellent. Okay. Back in April of 2022, I did it, and I got a 26, almost 26 out of 40. So it was like, okay, there was some work to be done there. And I was postpartum. But this one time I got 36 out of 40. I mean, all my stuff looked amazing, but what was interesting, so part of me was kind of like a little pissed, because I was like, what? Like, this isn't making sense to me. It's like, I couldn't make as much sense of all this as I wanted to, which was very frustrating. The control freak in me was having a hard time with this. And so but through going through the test, you guys, it was amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, some of these things are actually aligning with some of the stuff in my blood work. Like, just that little bit that was off of the progesterone, that was just a little low. It was showing in my gut test too. Like my bacteria that produces GABA, right? That's like a calming hormone. Is the GABA was they couldn't find any in there, and that was the same with my test last time too, which doesn't surprise me. So there were some things that were congruent on such a small level, even though I got this excellent score back. But it was interesting digging into all these different things and starting to really see how much stress affects our mental health and affects our hormones. And women, especially, you guys, we take on it. And if men are listening to this, I mean, to do so with some empathy is just so greatly appreciated, because women do, we can't compartmentalize everyone, but women are natural caregivers. We were like, it was kind of bred into us as, we were meant to carry babies. It's there so that those babies survive. If we weren't caregivers, then we wouldn't be as attentive to our children, but unfortunately those things can be exploited in life. We can allow them to be exploited in life and really wreck ourselves, saving the world, taking care of the world, and forgetting to take care of ourselves. And I don't just mean random bubble baths, you guys. I mean like emotional coping mechanisms. Like, for Pete's sake, learn boundaries, because people who don't have healthy emotional coping mechanisms have incredibly high rates of autoimmune conditions. So, like I said, there was a lot of stuff going on in my life over the year, and all of a sudden my autoimmune is kicked up. My mental health is the worst it's been in over a decade. I mean, boom, boom, boom. It came in hard and fast. But the whole time it was happening, I believe, and you guys, if I have to say it 100 million times, I guess I will, but I'm not a pusher of religion, okay, or anything like that. You don't have to be uncomfortable around me. I respect what everybody believes, but I do believe in a big, powerful God. And I knew that he had a purpose in this. Like, I just believed the whole time. So as miserable as it was, and it was walking blindfolded in the dark. I mean, it truly was. And a lot of life does that to us. We have to walk blindfolded in the dark. But if you believe that there's always light after the dark, and that was the point of the book I wrote 5 years ago, #MyEpicYear, like that was the conclusion it kept coming to, and all the stories in there and all the things that were happening. So if you believe that there's purpose in everything, that you're not alone, and that you will be pulled out of it, then you can keep walking. You can keep walking in dark. You can keep dealing, with the unknown, and kind of throw your hands up a little bit and let it just be unknown. And that's, I did. So thankfully I had that, even though it was debilitating. It was miserable. It was terrible. You guys, to be so transparent, it got so bad. My agoraphobia started coming back. Like, I started having a hard time, like, going certain places, picking the kids up from school. My kids' school, we have 4 places that our kids go to school, just a pain in the butt. But my son's school, they have this big pickup line that goes all the way around the school. And so once you get in that line, like, you ain't getting out of the line, And when my anxiety was so bad and the panic disorder stuff was coming back, I was I was having a hard time even getting them from school, because I was like, okay, like the feeling of getting stuck in that line. And anybody who's dealt with panic and anxiety like that, you understand what it does, how crazy it does work. It's not sensible to those who haven't ever experienced it, but those who have absolutely get it. And so it was horrible. And I was like, okay, the one light I thought that, and that's really hard to go through those things when you lead in health, right? Like I coach coaches, I teach gut health. Like this saved me many years ago. This saved my mental health, was what I do now. And I've been a walking testimony of it ever since. So to backpedal or fall on your face, it is hard, but it happens, like you got to be okay with it happening sometimes. And I just really, I had to believe that God had a purpose for it happening for me, and I was like, I can tell you right now, my empathy, like I always have empathy for people. Mental health is my passion, but I tell you what, there's nothing like going through it on the fresh in the now to reignite deep empathy. And what does that do, right? It gives us extreme passion, compassion, and purpose in everything we do. So I knew there was purpose in it, but I couldn't know what that looked like or how long or whatever. And hopefully I'm moving up and out of it. But I can tell you there's technical things that help me, doing some natural herbs and some autoimmune protocol, gut work, to help my progesterone levels, coming in with some supplementation for the low iron and vitamin D, being more mindful of my stress. There was a lot, eating plenty of nutrition, over Christmas, we kind of let it go for a week or two, but, coming in hot with that was really important, but especially autoimmune, getting some of that stuff out that is more reactive for people with inflammation markers at the time, even sometimes healthy foods, so focusing on that, I think definitely had help. But I can tell you, I've done that multiple times throughout this, and I've been on supplements for months and months and months. I have done stuff with my diet multiple times over in this last year and never seen the miraculous, sorry, I hate being emotional. If you know me, I hate it, but I can't even tell you what it is. But it just all played so well. The whole year it was just so profound. And so, here we go, so I'm going to be a massive advocate of mental health. I'm going to be a massive advocate of gut health, of paying attention to your hormones, guys, girls. Like I said, I want to talk all day long to men too, but I have to compartmentalize these topics, or I'll just trail into everything and everyone. But women, we've got to put an emphasis. You've got to find a practitioner that will look at your hormones, whether or not you choose to do SSRIs and things like antidepressants, and hormonal birth control. We need to do our research on the implications of these things on hormone health in the future, putting all these teenagers on hormonal birth control. Please do your research. Please do your research. I think it's absolutely negligent of a lot of these physicians to be doing a lot of the things they've been doing in the world of pharmaceuticals, and prescribing, especially these kids. We need to pay attention to how it affects their brain and affects their hormones. And we need to pay attention and really advocate for prevention. What can we do to support healthy brain function in our children with the rates of ADHD, autism, anxiety, depression, just cognitive decline, everything that we're dealing with. There's so much that we can do within the body. And absolutely, this is going to be my driving point, okay? Our emotional health. We are not weak. Women are far from weak. And I know that when we're dealing with hormones and we're talking about being more emotional, or, crying on a podcast, that it can make us feel weak, and we're always kind of fighting to be taken seriously a lot, honestly. But We were chose to birth children, and that is far from a weak thing to do, and raise children. And the mental and emotional load that we can take on is insane. We can take it on, but it doesn't mean we always should. And so oftentimes women, we are running ourselves into the ground. So if you are feeling unwell at all, I don't care if all your tests at your doctor came back that you are quote unquote totally fine. Please get in contact. Just start researching. Don't get paranoid, but start researching. Get a functional medicine practitioner. Get somebody to pull some real labs, some real blood work, some real hormone profile, and then start seeing what you can do to support that in your lifestyle. Of course, with your diet, of course, with your gut health, of course, with movement, and then especially with stress and emotional coping mechanisms and the garbage that maybe we haven't dealt with yet, because your body wants to heal. Your soul is amazing. So it wants to heal from things that have happened, and it's going to bring it out in our lives. So it'll find a way, and we will see it in our physical health. We will see it in our responses to how we deal with stuff in relationships and etc. Okay. It's very transparent in that way. So, I really hope that this meant something to you guys. Thank you. I'm going to struggle, I'll be honest with you, to publish this. I am. But like I always do anyway, I'm going to freaking do it anyway, because that's just what I do. So, but thank you guys. I just want to thank our whole community for being so exceptionally supportive. I want to I hope that maybe you feel less alone. I hope that maybe you feel more keen to those around you, your children, your friends, your partners, your moms, your grandmas, everybody. And of course, this isn't to exclude men. For Pete's sake, just please, be able to look out for those around you in a healthy way where you don't rob yourself of all of your life energy, right? But look out for yourself too, and seek healing. This year, you guys, my word, so I'd like to pick a word of the year. My word this year was live. And I picked that word before this stuff turned around. And I didn't tell anybody it. I just told my husband. I don't even know if I might have told him, but he doesn't remember. He might remember. But that was my word. And it's been a pretty intense experience, and to see that come into fruition. So anyways, I'm going to leave you guys with that, and just thank you so much for another awesome episode.
Thank you for joining us for another empowering episode of Buddha Belly Life. For more information on gut health and mindset resources, visit buddhabellylife.com. And remember, heal yourself and then empower others to do the same.